with Girls Who Start, our mission is to inspire middle school, high school, and college young women to become entrepreneurs and leaders. And we do this in three ways, basically. So we inspire by creating events that showcase female entrepreneurs.
You talked about entrepreneurial mindset, Mark, and how you see that in Ariel. Could you elaborate on that? What is an entrepreneurial mindset? What are the
Yeah.
skills or qualities that you were talking about?
And when we talk about mindset, it is opening your mind to the possibility. It's not necessarily starting a new venture. It is, can they change the future? Can they be part of that?
Hello and welcome everyone to Global Minds, the Harvard Alumni for Global Development podcast. This is your host Vivek. Here in Global Minds, we invite global development professionals from different walks of life and talk about their experience of trying to make the world a better place. And today I'm very delighted to have Marc Steren and Ariel Beck with me here. Thank you so much for joining, Marc and Ariel. Welcome.
Thanks for
Good
having
morning.
us. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So before I jump to my questions, I'd like to provide a short introduction of our guests for our audience. So starting with Marc. Marc is the co-founder and co-CEO at University Startups, which is a for-profit social impact company focused on helping low-income and disadvantaged students get into college and high-paying jobs. Marc has deep experience of teaching entrepreneurship and fostering entrepreneurship in higher education, including at the University of Maryland, the universities at Shady Grove, and Georgetown University. And before he turned to teaching entrepreneurship, Marc was an entrepreneur himself, starting and selling several successful businesses. And Ariel is the founder and president at Girls Who Start International, a nonprofit organization inspiring young women in middle school, high school, and college to become entrepreneurs and leaders. Operating in more than 50 chapters nationally and internationally, the organization holds events that showcase female entrepreneurs, give girls tools to turn their ideas into reality, and connects future female entrepreneurs to mentors and role models. Ariel is currently a rising senior at Harvard studying economics. Awesome. Anything you'd like to add to that? Anything I missed?
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll start with Marc then. Marc, I was very fascinated to see your bio and like your experience. You started as an entrepreneur, and then you moved to teaching entrepreneurship, and then now you're trying to scale that in a way through university startups. But I'm interested in knowing, how did you become interested in entrepreneurship in the first place? Yeah, go ahead.
No, great question. So, gosh, I was probably one of the many recovering attorneys that you'll meet across the way. Back in the 90s, there was a company called Moviefone. And so we ordered the tickets, and the process is you order the ticket over the phone, you go to the movie theater, and you wait in line at a kiosk. So we're super excited to try it out. And then when we went to the kiosk, went into the theater, we noticed that the line was just as long for the kiosk line as it was for the original line to order your ticket, as if you just appeared there. So me and a colleague thought, man, there's got to be a better way. So actually, we were one of the first inventors of mobile ticketing worldwide. We had celebrity athletes invest, Nokia invested, and we sold that company back in '01. And what was cool is just that entire experience immersed in entrepreneurship, seeing a problem, trying to do something about it. And the reality is we knew nothing about entrepreneurship. I mean, as little as we knew back then, there's so many great courses and so many great young entrepreneurs like Ariel. We were just clueless. And it was just so exciting to do and be part of that process. And we've kind of been an entrepreneur ever since.
That's a great story, yeah. And I love the part about, realizing a problem and trying to find a solution. And it seems like, that's maybe what has been the rest of your career as well, when you see a problem and then you try to come up with a good solution. Do you resonate with that, Ariel? Has your journey been similar? Like, was your inspiration also seeing a problem and then, trying to find a good way to solve it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an inspirational story, Marc. And I would say for me, it was similar, seeing the disparity in representation and funding that female entrepreneurs and leaders receive in the entrepreneurship world. And so with Girls Who Start, the primary difference we seek to make is to really combat the gender inequity embedded in the entrepreneurial and business world. And I think for me, it started when I was 13. My whole life, I grew up surrounded by female entrepreneurs and leaders. And it was really this one event that was focused on just female entrepreneurs. And it was the Amazon Women's Entrepreneur Conference that was hosted in Seattle, Washington in 2016. And at this event, again, centered on just female entrepreneurs, these women leaders were discussing the lack of credit and representation that they had received throughout their careers. And this was really startling to me. And so I went home, I became a bit more invested in this and did some research and found that at the time in 2016, 5% of all venture capital funding went to female founded companies, meaning that 95% went to male founded companies. And at the time, I didn't know that I was 13 at the time. I didn't really know what venture capital funding was, but just seeing those statistics, I knew that that was a problem I wanted to solve. And so with Girls Who Start, our mission is to inspire middle school, high school, and college young women to become entrepreneurs and leaders. And we do this in three ways, basically. So we inspire by creating events that showcase female entrepreneurs. We build by giving young women the tools that they need to develop leadership skills. And much of that we've done with Marc and university startups. And lastly, we create a global community of young entrepreneurs who really want to change the world.
Right. No, this is really amazing work that you're doing. And also the problem that you're trying to address. There's, as you mentioned, just 5% of venture capital goes to women founders. Why do you think that is, though? We know that there's a problem, gender parity in all kinds of profession, but especially in starting a company in entrepreneurship. What do you think what do you see are the main challenges for women founders to start or even get money?
And I'd also like to say, so the 5% was in 2016, but today it's actually 2% of all venture capital funding that goes to female founded companies. But I would say when we talk about entrepreneurship, big names come to mind. We think about Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, but less often we're thinking about women. And so similar to venture capital, I think a lot of this comes from a lack of resources and networks and support systems in place. And with venture capital funding, I think that stems from a disparity in not only, venture capital funding, but also the number of venture capitalists who are women. And I think sometimes with that, many of the entrepreneurs who've come to speak to Girls Who Start have mentioned that for young women who are specifically and entrepreneurs who are focusing on female-centric businesses, it's hard when you're pitching to a panel of VCs who don't entirely understand the problem that you're trying to solve. And so there's that. And I also think there's such a need for role models. And I think we sometimes underestimate the importance of role models and really driving change and inspiring young women to become entrepreneurs and leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think if you see someone like you, being successful, I think that really shapes your mindset about what you can do. Absolutely. Marc, is that something you have seen in your career? I think you also coach entrepreneurs. You've been in higher education. Is what Ariel was saying about, female entrepreneurs having challenging time, even just with the panels or getting funding. Is that something you see? And is that something you're trying to also address through university startups?
Yeah, so two things really come to mind right away. One is I love the entrepreneurial mindset that Ariel has. She's just, again, so impressive. I was nothing like that when I was coming out of college, but the ability to develop the networks is not only inspirational to her and her colleagues, but what she said is true. If we see more people in venture capital that look like Ariel or more minorities in venture capital, it would open things up a lot more, because the reality is, their male colleagues may simply not understand, the problems that they're addressing and how they address it in a way just different and unique. And so just as a company is more valuable if you have diverse and inclusive voices in there, venture capital and the marketplace in general is more valuable as we continue to build a diverse and inclusive pipeline. So it's really cool that she has that entrepreneurial mindset and is actively empowering others and causing change. And that's the power of entrepreneurship in general. That's why I think it's so valuable that it should be taught, nationwide and worldwide. In terms of what we do at universities, so we are focusing on the under-resourced learner. So we work with returning citizens, we work with nonprofits such as Ariel's or others in nationwide, and then we work with school districts. But again, we're focused in on the under-resourced learning, and many of our students have IEPs. So they're looking for individualized planning to develop a pathway to either higher education or career success. And so we just feel that entrepreneurship is kind of the bedrock of, learning these skills. Even if they don't choose their own venture, they learn to be empowered to cause change, whether that's within the organization, within the system itself, or again, like Ariel and some of her colleagues just producing their own ventures to effectuate change. So that's how we're doing it. And
Right.
that's our theory of change, is that entrepreneurship is kind of that bedrock behind it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I want to get back to, why do we really need more entrepreneurs in the world today? But you talked about entrepreneurial mindset, Mark, and how you see that in Ariel. Could you elaborate on that? What is an entrepreneurial mindset? What are the
Yeah.
skills or qualities that you were talking about?
Yeah. So it talks about grit. It talks about resilience. It talks about optimism. All these things can be learned. I'll give you an example. We went into a school district that had the eighth highest murder rate in the United States. One out of every two students measured as not hopeful for their future. I mean, can you imagine one out of two children have no hope for their future? After working with, university startups, 93% of those very same students were now more hopeful and optimistic for their future. So it's inspiring to be around these kids. They just don't see themselves. And I love what Ariel said about role models. They just don't see role models, around them that are like them and can do it. So entrepreneurship is not just transformative for the kid, it's generational. Now their younger sister or younger brother sees that the opportunity is there. So we're really excited about that. And when we talk about mindset, it is opening your mind to the possibility. It's not necessarily starting a new venture. It is, can they change the future? Can they be part of that? Can they be more hopeful, optimistic? We talk about more ability to take risks, to work in teams, to be accountable. There's so much that can be learned from the entrepreneurial mindset, whatever venture you choose to do,
Right.
or whatever pathway
Well,
you choose to take.
yeah. And I think I like this definition, how it's a lot of things, but especially behavioral skills, not just technical skills. So you talked about grit, optimism, hope, mindset, taking risks. So these are like character skills that I think
They're life
sometimes we.
skills. They are the ability, to change your life.
Right, absolutely. Are these the kind of skills that you're also focusing on, Ariel, with Girls Who Start, like to the program that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we work with Mark and university startups, and Mark has really worked to within our leadership and hackathon events to really instill this mindset. And I think there are some lessons that I've learned along the way and that we really try and teach our members. And I think one of those is being the change. And so it's easy to have an idea, but it's hard to start. And so if you see a problem that you want to change, just like Mark did, you don't wait for someone else to take that step. You should be the one to just take that first step. And you need to find a gap. So in order for an idea to be new and innovative, it needs to solve a problem. So you think about a problem that you're facing, or, you ask your family members or friends a problem that they have faced, and you really take a step and really target one of those. I think also something else we think about is that anyone can change the world no matter their age. And again, it just starts with seeing that one problem that you want to solve, and you just take that first step, and one step turns into the next. And with Girls Who Start, we've really seen that. So when we first started, our first event had under 10 young women attend the event. And today we're at almost 6,000 members. And if you told me that this is where we would be today, I wouldn't believe you back then. So that's something else. I would also say the more you ask, the more help you'll get. And so you shouldn't be afraid to ask. And you'll get a lot of no's before you get the first yes, and that's really okay. In my experience, and I'm sure Mark can relate to this, I've gotten a lot of no's sometimes when you're, especially working in a 100% volunteer organization or for a nonprofit. You're really reaching out and putting yourself out there and asking for help. And I've gotten a lot of no's, but you really need to get those no's before you get that first yes. And that's really, you need to focus on those small victories, and that's how you get to the next step.
So
Yeah.
imagine a world, Vivek, where you have, millions of kids like Ariel who see a problem, act on it, and imagine a world where they're in under-resourced neighborhoods who, address the issues that are important to them and their community and are solving a problem. I mean, that is really exciting and empowering for the individuals that live in those neighborhoods and those communities. And just when people talk about, you know, creating a better world and what that can look like, it all starts with that mindset of the ability that you can, that you can be part of the change,
Yeah.
which is just incredibly powerful.
Yeah. I totally
And
agree.
then
And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, adding on to what Mark is saying as well, I think, people from different backgrounds, whether that's women or other, minorities, have different life experiences too that lead to solving new and innovative problems. And so, really, I mean, these minorities and women are proven to be great leaders. They just need that chance and that support to really get to that next step. But once they are there and have that, support backing them up, that's really how you really see some effective change going on.
We worked with another nonprofit, and one of the kids was not from the greatest neighborhood, a little anxious because she, heard things that were unsettling to her in the neighborhood. So she came up with the idea for a teddy bear to hold on to when she was anxious. But the clever innovation was to put a QR code in the bottom of the teddy bear that she could flash her mobile device and send her to a psychologist anytime she wanted, right? So it's thinking about issues that are important to them, something that, I couldn't just drop in and try to solve that or think about those problems because I'm not experiencing them, but teaching everyone the methodologies, the mindset that, these are things that can be addressed. So it was just so empowering to listen to her, give this idea, create this idea that she could, then promote in her community. It was really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Lots of great things to that I agree on. I think one thing, anyone can change. It's not about who, but it's about, how do you give everyone the access and opportunity. So absolutely agree. And I think this point about, bringing local solutions is so important as, this is also a community of global development. And, I am currently in a low resource setting, for example, in Nepal, and I see that there's, and not just in Nepal but all over the world, there's a development industry, and one of the biggest critique is that there's solutions that is designed outside that is brought in, but then what's really effective is if the solution is born there. And I think that's what you're also talking about, Mark, is when the people there realize the problem and act on it and try to come up with a solution. And I think that is the best way that things can change. um, yeah, and then also about what you said, Ariel, about failing and not being afraid to fail, and how in your own journey that you've also had no's, but still, I think where you've come from 10 students to 6,000, I think you said in your latest program, which is an incredible journey.
It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Can I just address failure real
yeah.
quickly? So people talk
Mhm.
about, hey, you got to go through failures. And then meanwhile, many school systems are derived to be anything but failing, right? Whether it's grade inflation or just all the things, you got to get an A and people study towards the A. We're not really encouraging kids to take risks. And again, this is the power of what Ariel's done and others like her and entrepreneurship can do for our society is she didn't know she was going to succeed. She didn't know she was going to have 6,000 people. She just spoke of having 10 people show up to her first event. I mean, that is just, it's incredible, the journey and the uniqueness of trying to address it and knowing there's a high probability that you will fail, just taking that first step is so empowering. And even if you do fail, it's the continuation of learning what you did to then make your next venture better or to help address different issues. It's just interesting because it kind of goes against what's being taught to kids now in schools. And so
Right.
how do we address that? Because people talk about failure, it's the latest cliche, but then our entire educational system is kind of stacked against kids taking risk or saying,
Right.
things that are, different than others. And so we just need to reframe
Yeah.
our educational system and how we can empower kids, really empower kids.
Definitely, yeah. How do you offer incentives to fail, and not incentive to just succeed? Yeah. And I think I mean, if you go into the education system, I think there's a lot of gaps that we see. I mean, I come from an education background, so I have a lot to say, and, I'm motivated to think about that. But I think that is something that I also advocate for. It's like, it's not about training for life, but it is a laboratory for life. So you're not preparing, but then you're living how to fail and succeed and create and recreate. So I think that's an important gap and something I see that university startups is trying to fill by offering those courses and those pathways. Is that something you've also noticed, Ariel? Like you are still in college. Are schools preparing entrepreneurs, or do you think there's still a gap in what you learned in high school or what you're learning in college, and what entrepreneurs really need to become successful outside?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Mark is saying is that in schools and college as well, in middle school, high school, all the way through college is you're trying to achieve, do what you can to get an A. And that's kind of the baseline, is this going to be on the exam? Whereas when you're really trying to be an entrepreneur, it's about taking a jump and not being afraid to have a failure because that's how you learn and that's how you get to the next step. And I think I actually read this really good book, which really focuses on this by Tina Selig called What I Wish I Knew When I Was 20. And really, she is a professor at Stanford and talks about the importance of failing. And really, she talks about never miss an opportunity to be fabulous. And that's really wherever you are, looking out for those opportunities and really trying to make an opportunity out of these problems that you're seeing and facing. And again, with that, not being afraid to fail. And it's, in fact, really emphasizing failing. And in these classes, it's not based on the grade she discusses, it's about how much you do fail. And I think that's really important. And that's something that is missing is that it's a completely different mindset focusing on, doing the bare minimum to get an A versus when you're trying to be an entrepreneur and learning these skill sets. It's about you want to fail and then take what you learned from that experience and apply it to the next one.
Absolutely. How do you think, Mark, that we can bridge this gap that we're seeing? I know this is something that you've been thinking deeply through university startups. So maybe it's an opportunity for us to know more about, how you're working with schools to bridge this gap.
Yeah, so what we do is we partner with schools and school districts, and we embed our curriculum and our AI tools into their learning management system. And our courses are more focused on the skills. So not only will they measure the grade, but they'll measure 42 different metrics, things we spoke of earlier, the entrepreneurial mindset, improvements, just how we can get these kids better for what they really need down the road. And that can relate to careers, that can relate to higher education, and how they're interconnected. And let me give you a quick little example. We had a wonderful student. She went through our career readiness program, realized she had skills and passion for social justice. The algorithm found her an internship close by in the DMV area. So she learned how to build a resume to avoid the applicant tracking system, learned how to interview, learned about the LinkedIn and socials, got the internship. She's like, wow, this is really cool. I'm getting paid to do something I'm really passionate about and skilled. So then she went to the college counseling program, wrote about that experience, and now she's at a great HBCU here in Washington D.C. and called Howard University. And again, that's generational. Now her younger sister's interested in school, and just taking that mindset, taking that experience. And I love what Ariel said before, is maximizing that into an opportunity for that young lady where now she's just crushing it and just excited about her future. So it's that mindset that she can feel empowered and be awesome. Less focus on the grades. Quite candidly, I don't have it solved yet in terms of how to get them pivot away from focus on grades and more on these skills. There's some movements, the mastery movement and the others that are focused in on skills. But I will say that many of the students, we're in 8 states now, focusing on individualized planning. And those are different metrics and different focuses. How can we make those kids that are missing some of the advantage awesome? And so they measure things slightly different than just grades. So I'm really excited to be part of that as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe as we progress, maybe there'll be more data that will support our, theory, or what we believe in is that these skills are what really matters rather than grades. So
I got to tell you another quick story. Sorry, Vivek. We had a
yeah,
student that went through my program years ago send me an email saying, "Hey, professor, want to let you know I'm in Ghana. Can we have a quick call?" So I said, "Sure." Got on a call with him. I can't remember if it was Google Meets or whatever it was. He said, "Hey, professor, I'm in Ghana. I love what you taught me. I have a semester abroad. I'm going to teach students here in Ghana entrepreneurship. Can you send me the curriculum and let me work with them?" It's the constant give first, empowering, being empathetic that he learned through entrepreneurship. And it did so well for him now that he's teaching others and spreading, the power of it, which I thought was so cool.
yeah, well, that's an amazing story.
Wow.
And yeah, I think, in school, as Ariel was mentioning, it's about getting A. It's often about competition. But then I think what's really important is, how do you collaborate? How do you work with others? How do you leverage individual skills? Which is also something I think we need to shift in our schools. But we touched upon internationally how this is also relevant all over the world. And Ariel, I saw that Girls Who Start is also now going international. That you have, you call branches or
Yeah, chapters. So we have
chapters, right? Right.
over
So
60
in
chapters.
Right, and then some in India and China and other parts of the world also. Do you see any difference in the women that come from these places and the needs that they have, or the mindset that they come with versus the chapters in the U.S.?
Yeah, I would say even so, our fourth annual Girls Who Start Design Challenge Hackathon, which Mark leads the entrepreneurship and design challenge portion of, which we hosted in April. We had young women attend from all across the world, really. Again, from the US, Canada, India, Africa, Brazil. And the second place, or I think the honorary mention team was from Brazil, and they were, again, solving this problem that they really none of us could have really solved because it was really unique to their experiences. And I think kind of goes back to what we were saying about these, you can't come in and really solve this problem if you don't understand it and don't experience it firsthand. And so I think with these events, we're really seeing a different mindset, a strong drive, but also solving new and innovative problems, which I think is truly incredible to see this mix of new ideas and how they're really being facilitated and really created into this idea and pitching it to a panel of judges all in one day, but really coming from different backgrounds. I think it's incredible to see the ideas that these young women are coming up with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as we know, diversity is important when solving a problem, right? So you don't want a team that is just one geography or one gender or different, so you want different skills and perspectives. And I think that is a good point when we think about solving problems, that we need people from all over the world thinking about big challenges. that are global, such as climate change and all. Um, do you think you would operate differently in a low resource setting? For example, if you were in Nepal, um, do you think the challenges or the gaps are different in how, where students are, learners are, where the market is?
Well, I'm not overly familiar with Nepal, so I don't know, in terms of the hypothetical, I would say that every community has its own distinct needs, and own challenges that they're overcoming. And I think those individuals that are there are best placed to help solve those. What we do well is we can give them the methodology and the skills to empower those individuals to then help them solve those problems uniquely and different and better than I would if I was in their place. And I think that's what we do well. So we run the largest equity incubator on the East Coast. It's funded by Congress. And we had a team that was using generative AI to help farmers in Africa plant, when to plant, what kind of seeds to buy. And it was just, they were 4Xing production. They were more profitable. But he understood that problem, that unique problem, better than I can because he's gone through an experience, just understood that to a micro level better than I can. But he needed us to help provide a process, a way of thinking to develop his company to really grow and scale. And I think that is very teachable, and I think that's something scalable, and I think everyone around the world really can benefit from that mindset and those methodologies, um, that every entrepreneur needs to grow his or her company.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's very true. It's the framework that you can bring to different problems that you can apply.
It's empowering. I mean, it's empowering. I mean, we have, again, some amazing entrepreneurs like Ariel that take that methodology and then just blow it up and just improve on it, right? And that's what we build on each other's work and keep better and better and learn from each other as entrepreneurship grows. But to be able to think like that, you can, again, within your ability, solve it. So we can empower individuals from under-resourced communities to, we think it helps solve poverty through entrepreneurship, not necessarily come up with new ventures, but just the mindset alone can really help.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, there's a lot of challenge in developing low resource settings that people don't see opportunities and they go to places where there is already opportunity. But then I think what we're talking about is, you can create opportunities wherever you are. And I think that is the way to develop the place.
Yeah, and I don't want to undersell the lack of resources that many members in the community have, right? That we simply have, and where I'm from, and the communities that I, that again, that my colleagues are from. And to Ariel's point that so many, young ladies and amazing female entrepreneurs or minority entrepreneurs simply are not provided the resources that many of my colleagues have. With that being said, how can we together address those issues? And I think it starts with the mindset, and then we can work together to build those resources.
Absolutely. Well, I think we might want to conclude, but then, Ariel, we talked about, you mentioned the lessons that you learned in your entrepreneurial journey and, how you'd encourage everyone to fail. Um, is there anything else you would like to add to? Because I know a lot of our audience may be young graduates, recent graduates, or people who are still in college, and who may be interested in, starting something on their own. So, how do you think? What kind of message would you like to share with our audience? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. So I would reiterate again, really finding a problem that you faced and just taking that first step. Also to not be wary of your age and think, I'm so young, I can't solve this problem, but it's really, anyone can really take that first step. And it's even important when you're at the young age, when you have these chances and more resources to fail, and to learn from that. I would also say that I've learned in my experience, it has been the most empowering to give others the opportunity to be their own leader. I've also learned through this the power of delegation. And I guess one quick memento is before, in the beginning of Girls Who Start, I struggled a bit with delegating tasks to my support team. And after I arrived at Harvard my freshman year, I really recognized that balancing academics and new relationships, a new home, all while leading a hands-on organization really posed a definite challenge. And
Yeah.
so after several weeks, I realized, delegation really was the only option. And so in the fall of 2021, I created positions for a Girls Who Start national team. And so to really help run our day to day logistics and run the organization. And so, really, after bringing this team on board, not only was my workload lessened, I really experienced the joy of what it means to empower others to lead. And so I think there's the idea of when you're starting off and taking those risks, but also, once you're in a position of leadership or even working in a team, really empowering those around you. Because ultimately, as we were discussing, when you're in school, you're taught really, about competition, but we forget, especially in entrepreneurship, the importance of working in a team. And that's really how you achieve success.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing that up. A lot of important leadership skills and empowering others, and failing and again failing. Well, thank you so much. This was really amazing. And yeah, thank you for joining us, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for having us.
Good seeing you, Ariel.